Luz y Progreso. This is Sancista, Brujo Luis. So today I'm going to tell you a folklore, not a mythology, a folklore from my island of Borinquen, Puerto Rico. So in my island of Borinquen, what is now known as Puerto Rico, there was a medicine man, and his name was Yob Buenau Huaba. Now Yob Buenau Huaba was not just only a medicine man, a beike, but he was also what we consider a bayawasa or bayawaisa. A bayawaisa is a person, an individual that identifies both with male and feminine energy, yin and yang, Padre Sol, the sun, y Madre Luna, the moon. Now on the nights of the full moon, when Caraya was full, Yob Buenau Huaba would collect flowers throughout the island, and he would go to the river where he would offer these beautiful flowers to the river spirits and to Caraya, the moon semi. Now in Taino spirituality, it is known that at night the Maboya and the Opia, the ancestors of the Opia, would come out, and the Maboya spirits. The Maboya spirits would be like elemental spirits, bush spirits. Now these mischievous, malicious Maboya spirits would watch Yob Buenau Huaba bring this basket full of flowers of all colors, and they became very envious at the sight of watching him giving these flowers to the river spirits and to Caraya, the moon. So these Maboya spirits that creep at night became very envious of what Yob Buenau Huaba was doing, and they plotted against him. So these Maboya spirits went into the village, into the Yucayeke at night, and they stole a bunch of macanas, right, from Taino warriors. So the malicious Maboya spirits with the macanas, the clubs in hand, hid behind some ceiba trees at night, and they waited patiently for Yob Buenau Huaba to arrive. When he did arrive to the river, the Maboya spirits jumped out from behind the ceiba, and with their macanas they began to beat him, and one of the Maboyas happened to chop his head off. Now, although Yob Buenau Huaba was decapitated, Yob Buenau Huaba had received the gift of immortality from the semi of the moon, Caraya. Now Caraya, the moon semi, witnessed this atrocity, and in her pain and in her sorrow, she summoned the semi of rain, and rain began to fall on the island of Borinquen, representing her mourning, her sorrow for Yob Buenau Huaba. Now Yob Buenau Huaba, who was dazed and confused at what just had happened, him losing his head, he gathered his head and went back to the Yucayeke, to the Casiasco, and went back to his bohío, his hut. Now the following morning, when the Yucayeke arose, the people saw Yob Buenau Huaba without a head, and they began to fear him. They shouted, "This is a Maboya, this is a Maboya spirit, for no Guisa, no living spirit can live without their head." And so the people of this Yucayeke, his family, threw him out of the Yucayeke, and so Yob Buenau Huaba gathered his head and wandered into the rainforest. Now during this time when Yob Buenau Huaba was shunned by his society, he lived in a rainforest, and during the 29 days that he did reside in this rainforest, Caraya, the semi of the moon, mourned him, and so rain fell for 29 days upon the whole island of Borinquen. Now during this time of exile, Yob Buenau Huaba gathered thread, cotton thread of 7 various colors, and he began to thread, to braid this weaving. So during these 29 days when it was raining on the island of Borinquen, Yob Buenau Huaba kept braiding and braiding and braiding until the 29 days had passed and Caraya was full again. And Yob Buenau Huaba brought this ofrenda, this offering to Caraya. And he took one end of this braided rope that he had weaved, and he went to the river and he tied one end to a stone, a ceiba stone, and he took the other end and he cast it up into the heavens, where Caraya, the moon semi, reached out and grabbed hold. This, of course, pleased Caraya, the moon semi, and she stopped crying, and for the first time in 29 days, the rain on Borinquen had stopped, and she was pleased with this ofrenda that Yob Buenau Huaba had given her, that she transformed this 7-colored rope into a rainbow. Then Yob Buenau Huaba gathered his head and he began to climb this rainbow to reach Caraya, the moon semi. And Caraya, with her deep love for Yob Buenau Huaba, saw the man decapitated, and in her love for this man, she cast a spell on him. She cast her magic, and she transformed him into a beautiful colored bird that she called Iguaca. Iguaca would be a parrot. Now, after a lunar cycle, 29 days, Caraya became full again. And on that night, in memory of Yob Buenau Huaba, now Iguaca, she created a rainbow that came from the river back to the moon, to Caraya. Now, on that very night of the full moon, there was a Taino maiden by the name of Taimani. Taimani meaning good, valiant waters. She had gone to the river on that night of the full moon to bathe and purify herself with the rays of Caraya, la luna. Now Yob Buenau Huaba, now named Iguaca, watched Taimani bathe, and although he was Biawaisa, two-spirited, desire grew within him. This, of course, enraged Caraya, the moon semi, and she placed magic, magia, on Iguaca, the magic of urge. And Iguaca could not resist her magic, and in his beautiful feathers he flew down towards the earth. And Yob Buenau Huaba, now named Iguaca, under the spell of Caraya, flew down to where Taimani was washing, and he went between her legs and he bit, causing red water to flow out from her. And from this flowing red water that gushed out of Taimani came out the first menstruation cycle of woman. So Taimani was in her ovulation cycle at that moment, and from that act she became pregnant, and her eggs became parrots. She gave birth to parrots of all colors. And Yob Buenau Huaba, now known as Iguaca, stayed in the earth to become the king, the father of all parrots and birds of color. And from this Borinquen Taino folklore, we get the creation of the rainbow, woman menstruation, and the creation of parrots. I hope you enjoyed this video. Sansista Brujo Luis. Ciao.